Hello, my name is Prasad Jaladi. I am your moderator for the session on UN SDG Goal 13, Climate Action. Our objective today is to share with you our passion and mission on the UN Sustainable Developmental Goal 13, Climate Action Again. Our objective is to educate and bring awareness to the issue, inspire to act in resolving the issue, foster social entrepreneurship. Such a Life's World Kindness Day is a fitting reminder to all of us on how we need to live on our planet. I have the company of distinguished panel members Dr. Raul Gouvea, George Cummings, and Ken Alston. I would let our panels introduce themselves in the shortest time possible before getting into our conversation. I will start first as a moderator prerogative, and my name is Prasad Jaladi. I am the founder and chief facilitator of Suraksha, all volunteer experts organization. We are all volunteers. We are running this organization with all these experts from different walks. I'm a social entrepreneur. I did masters in organic chemistry, worked in pharma, biotech, and IT industries. I also involved in smart city approaches, and I'm also a mentor at startup incubators in US and also in India. We are mentoring, offering training programs, supporting innovation and technology commercialization. We are also a founding member of MISO AM SDG 17 with a focus on SDG 14. I'm delighted to have George with us. He is the founder and lead of this group. Let's start with our panel members' introduction, starting from Dr. Raul.
First of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me to be part of this panel today. It's an honor and it's a privilege to be here with you guys today. A little bit of my background. I have been teaching business and green economics at the business school at the Alston Schools of Management, University of New Mexico for many years. I have published, a few pieces on environmental related issues. I have organized a number of conferences on water related issues, indigenous, entrepreneurship in the Amazon region. Also, I created a conference on sustainability and disability too, addressing the issues of people with disability in this big picture of sustainability. And lately, I have spent some time in the Amazon region too. I have been a consultant to the World Bank and a few other federal agencies in Brazil as well. And it's a pleasure to be here with you all today, and waiting to learn a lot from you guys today too. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much, Prasad. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Raul. Ken, would you like to go next?
Yes, I'd like to echo Raul's thanks for inviting us to the conference today. It's a real honor and privilege to be here. The first half of my career, I spent in a global multinational company working all over the world, and was very early in sustainability when the term was first coined more than 30 years ago. And the last 21 years, I've been working as a consultant on what we now call the circular economy. So I've been through a long history of sustainability, and I'm looking forward to the conversation today.
Great. George, what's up?
Well, it's a humbling honor to be here with everybody. And yes, Prasad, thank you very much for asking me to be part of this prestigious opportunity on World Kindness Day, which is near and dear to my heart, because I feel like random acts of kindness are what we need to sort of overtake the planet. And my history, I'm a biochemist and entrepreneurial technology geek. I worked in the hospital environment for a long time, and then ended up working for Abbott Labs that took me all over the planet, putting biochemistry testing things in labs, and opened my eyes up while working the South Pacific to diving on the Great Barrier Reef, which I returned to in 2000. That when I was there was in the late 70s. I also had to install computers all over Western Europe and a third of the United States over a 6-year period. That experience showed me a whole lot of different cultures and personalities, and everybody sort of is similar, is what I learned. We all are pretty general. About 80, 90% of us are all just, want the basic things. We'll call it the kindness things to be fulfilled. And if we just had those basics fulfilled, this planet would really thrive. So it's part of, I started much like Ken said, I started putting solar black painted PVC pipes on adobe buildings in New Mexico in the late 70s, late 60s and early 70s. So I've been at this a while, trying to do anything I could to give back to the planet. And like Prasad said, we're all volunteers. So I volunteered with Sylvia Earle that got me to the UN, and that's how I became one of the ocean ambassadors, trying to do all we can to solve the nexus of climate and ocean are essentially the same thing. And so it's an honor to be here, and I totally look forward to this today, especially, well, all of it. I can't wait. And I didn't know about Raul. I did a lot of stuff with people with disabilities, so I have a new connection with you. And Ken, I know we shouldn't use the word love with another guy maybe, but boy, Ken is one of the new finds that I'm just delighted to be here with the panel on him again.
Love is just fine with me.
Great. Yeah, Ken and George and of course Raul also reminded me of my previous gigs when I was working in pharma industry as an R&D manager. Yes, Ken, there was no such word like sustainability in those days. I literally tweaked the process of pharmaceutical products then. We saved a lot of volume of dangerous chemicals and other solvents, and also reminded me about those distillations and the recirculation of the solvents, the costly solvents, I would say, in a sustainable mode, so that we won't be putting these things into the environment first. So having said that, George, I have a question for you to begin with.
Yeah.
What are the parameters we humans need to be kind? I thought you would be kind of an amphibian. You work in different, SDGs and also on the ocean side of it. You are a prolific diver and work with Sylvia. I just want to prick your mind on that. Could you say what it means? Why we need to do this now?
I'll start with our behaviors. Just our behavior. Again, like I said, random acts of kindness. Our behaviors with the planet and with other people need to have the same global attitude all the time. We need to be thinking, what is the potential outcome for the other person? I was brought up, my mother was part American Indian and from Oklahoma, where they, so I was brought up with a lot of American Indian attitudes. And so balance with nature is just so important. So our kindness with nature and each other is a parameter that we really need to work on. And the UN actually has a list of 50 actions that we as humans can possibly do to be kind to our planet and help us. And I'll try to figure out some way to get that to Prasad to get it so we can get posted when this airs.
Dr. Raul, please share your view on this as well. Why we need to be kind?
I think we need to start thinking about us living in a global village. And I think what you guys are saying is so much true. I think sustainability has a lot to do with that. We need to start working together. There is no sustainability if we don't work together as a group, as a number of countries. I look at what's happening in Glasgow this week, and that's pretty much one of the problems that we are facing, because we have a number of countries that are very much willing to comply with the new sustainability guidelines, and emissions and so on and so forth. And there are a lot of countries postponing their commitments or very much refusing, to acknowledge the fact that we all work together here. We need to work together. And if we don't, I don't think we'll be able to create a better future for the next generation. So the fact that we are being kind today to one another also has a huge impact in the future of our great-grandkids, back. This is also part of our responsibility today. What are we leaving behind? what is our legacy when it comes to sustainability, when it comes, and those discussions nowadays is also a very interesting way to build bridges between cultures, between countries, between people with different beliefs. I mean, I think we have a common goal. We want to make sure that the future generations have a better place to live. And I think this has all come together, I mean, as a result of what we are discussing today. Yeah.
I have to say this, the UN SDG 13 climate action won't go without the support of UN SDG 12 and also 14. So we all know, being professional on this kind of works, you could actually involve those UN SDGs also briefly, because our work connects all these things, and these things are very essential to achieve climate action also. So please feel free to bring in some perspective along with those lines as well, if you could. With that, Ken, please go ahead.
Well, I think another way of saying what's already been said is to use the word respect. I think we have to respect each other and other species. I think that we often forget that we're not only talking about the human species, but all species on the planet. And I think we have to broaden that kindness, beyond humans. And so I go back to reminding myself frequently, what is it that we're trying to sustain? We can keep talking about sustainability all day long, but what is it that we're trying to sustain? And for me, I come back to life, the word life. And so I think we have to respect life on Earth in all its forms. And that requires us to have an understanding of what it means to be alive. And so I think, as we get into our discussion, I'd be happy to talk more about that. But I think respecting life in all of its forms, and sustainability and circular economy are concepts. They're simple concepts designed to make us think differently, to change our paradigm, to change our point of view.
Yeah.
But the problem with the concept, that's the good thing about a concept. It's simple enough to get you to click and think a different way. But the problem with the concept is it's also simplistic. And when you try to do things in the real world is complex. And when you look at life, the scale of life, from the smallest bacterium to the largest mammal, the blue whale, it's huge. And so I think somewhere in the middle, we're missing this. There's a gap between simplicity of concepts and complexity of the real world. And this is where I think we have to seek some of the answers.
So since you brought up this sustainability aspect, why we are less sustainable today than when sustainability first became a thing?
I think it's because we've focused on the simplistic, and we haven't really paid attention to the complexity. When I think about the concept of sustainability, we talk about the 3 E's: ecology, economy, and equity, or sometimes the 3 P's: people, planet, profit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this is great, because it begins to help you say, look, there's more to this than just money. It's not only about economics.
Yeah.
Of course, the global economy is a big driver of everything, so you can't ignore it. But there are other things as well. There's the planet, there's environment, and there's people and another species for equity. But that's the simplistic side of it. It's like, now, how do you translate that into the real world? And so we've got to bridge this gap between the good things of talking about the concepts, but now saying, what does it mean? I mean, even the fact that we have SDG 13, on our screens here, it's one of 17 SDGs.
Yeah.
And the fact that we need 17 SDGs tells you that it's complex. And yet if we only stay in our little, SDG 13 box, we'll forget that we also have to deal with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and all the others at the same time.
You're absolutely right. I mean, when I start really designing my conferences on indigenous entrepreneurship in the Amazon region, and you start talking about sustainability, and a lot of people, it's mostly concentrating on the forest, very few people talking about the water resource that we have in the region. But I go like, what about the people? We have 30 million people living in the Amazon region. What are you going to do? We need to find ways, for them a decent quality of life, and at the same time, make sure that we protect the local ecosystem. So it's a complex issue, like you said, and simplistic solutions sometimes don't really provide the right answers, and that's what we are seeing a lot of times.
Yeah, that's a good point, Dr. Raul. So how do we improve education, awareness raising, and human and institutional capacity now? Because it seems to be huge. There is huge gap, I would say, in general. So how do we go about that?
Yeah, I think you guys raise a very interesting point. It's triple bottom line, and I was teaching some execs from the local public schools here in New Mexico a few years ago. And I was asking them, do you have any courses on sustainability at your schools? Because there is a lot of federal money and you can develop sustainability programs. And I think we need to start working with the kids early on. For sure they can learn a lot from their parents, but then again, I think professors also have a huge responsibility in really changing those kids' mindsets about the environment, and really they can start young. Sometimes at the college level is a little bit too late. I mean, it's never too late, but I think if we start shaping those minds early on, I think everyone can benefit from that. And that's pretty much my take. I mean, I think we need to start really sharing some of those ideas, some of those concepts with the kids, because the planet belongs to them, not to us. We're at the end of our cycle here. And I think that's something that we need to understand. We need to pay attention to what they want us to accomplish and what they want us to leave behind for them. And I see a huge disconnect at a lot of times when I see, senior folks dismissing points of view of some of the younger folks because they were born in this new sustainability paradigm. And we didn't. I mean, we started talking. I remember going to the 1992 Rio Summit when I was in Rio. Back in 92, it was one of the first times ever that we started really talking seriously about sustainability. In those days, nations were taking, the front seat. And lately, I mean, companies, multinationals and NGOs are really driving the whole process. Nations, I think, still have a little gap there. They are falling behind in a lot of those commitments. But I think it's our responsibility to make sure that schools really have programs, have courses, have activities, that really instill in their kids, the importance of the environment, and also to let them understand that we all live in this global village, and we need a greener planet. We need a more sustainable planet. And you are so right. Our species matter. I think it's something that we also need to be very much aware of, that would be my take about that, my introduction, bring them young,
Great. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to jump in there, Prasad, on education, because you know this about me. And it is absolutely one of my most enjoyable SDG actions. And that is going to schools. It's actually how Ken and I met, talking to thousands of global students from Bogota, Colombia was where it was hosted, but they had this thing where they were 16 weeks and they taught the 16 goals. Each week they taught the goal, and we were the speakers each for our week of the sustainable goals. I did over 50 what I call ocean talks, blue economy career jobs, STEM, to high school students and junior high school, primarily in Mexico. But I want to now share to you the absolute mind-blowing thing that occurred to me after doing some of those talks. The lady who does my translation, which I force it to be translation because we need to connect to cultures. If I could speak Spanish, I wouldn't want to. So anyway, she's my translator, and she calls me one morning, 8 o'clock, says, "Can you please come to a school and talk to the students?" And it was the day we were getting ready to do the March for the Ocean event. So it was a jam-packed day. It was the second time we'd done a march. And I said, "Oh my God, Betty, where is it?" She said, "They're already outside. They're sitting under the auditorium. They're waiting on you." I said, "Oh my God, these kids." She said, "It's the kindergartners." I went, "What?"
Yeah.
I've been talking to kids about sustainability at the junior high school level. I had the drive time to get there to think of something. I get there, the kids are all sitting out there, 600 of them under the auditorium. we're trying to get set up, and I just say, Betty, just start talking. You know the story. You've heard it too many times. Let me get myself organized here. Pretty soon, one little child gets up, little girl. She walks over to the podium and looks up at Betty talking with the microphone. And Betty says, would you like to say something? And the little girl nodded. She took the microphone, and I heard her, and I knew she said something about fish because I heard Pascal. Again, Raul, if I have enough tequila, Raul, my Spanish is really good. Anyway, she said pescados, fish. So I knew she was saying something. 6 years old. 6 years old. She knows I'm coming to talk about the ocean. And what does she say to Betty in the audience? Please save the fish.
Yeah.
6 years old. A 6-year-old should be thinking about Barbie dolls and bicycles and things like that. She should not be worrying about a fish to have a fish taco on her table, but to think that she knows who I am at 6 years old. So we need to go there, and that's what I do now. I even go now to summer camps for kids, and we'll teach them how to make paper mache turtles, and I tell them the turtle story, and it just, they don't have any tears, eyes, all the species are in danger, blah, blah, blah. My point is, we can go all the way to the bottom, gentlemen. We can go to the kindergartners, and here's the way I started looking at it. A 6-year-old today, at the end of this decade of action, will be a voter.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, you are absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, perhaps I could.
If I keep going back to those schools for 10 years, I'll have 10 years, and that's my intention, to go twice a year to the same schools. And just update them and saying, hey, come, are you getting in the Marine Park intern program we've got, blah, blah, blah. All these wonderful career opportunities that I'm offering them. Say, go do good in school, and you can come. You can have a paid scholarship in your 11th and 12th year and work at the Marine Park or the dive shop or the Ocean Research Center and have a blue economy career. So anyway, I'm just saying, that's the way I'm looking at it. If we start young, and we stay with them, and we're walking hand in hand, like Raul was. This is not there. We are not just kind of leaving them with this and saying good luck kind of thing. We got to put the boots on, get in the mangrove mud, put the fins on, go plant some baby corals, and when they march on the Capitol, march with them.
Well, I'd like to, if I could build on something you said right at the beginning, George, and also what you said, Raul. George, you talked about attitudes and behaviors, and I think both are important. We change the attitude with the concepts, with the education, and I think it is completely right and important to be in the schools at all levels, and to be helping them understand, these complex issues. But I think we do have to get also to what you were saying about the mangrove swamps. We've got to change behaviors. Right, so we have to do both. We have to do the education piece and the attitudes, and we have to then instill new behaviors. And Raul, I think one of the things I'd like to continue to talk to you about, even outside of this event, is how do we, do all of the work on the curriculum, which is super important, but then also change how the school is actually run. How do we also get to the administrators so that when the environment that they're in the school is also living up to these principles? So they're getting it through the lessons, and they're getting it environmentally, literally all around them.
No, I think that's very, very important.
Can I just slip because of Ken?
Yeah.
To expand on one thing for us, and that is Ken. This is one of the most impressive things that I got out of Ken. Was what is being taught in engineering schools now compared to back with the whole concept of sustainability. And I'll just leave it at that so Ken can expand on it and Raul can go into it. But that's the dynamic change. If we teach them the SDGs in school, we'll probably have SDGs come out when they go to the polls and get jobs.
Yeah, I agree.
Anyway,
So I share.
Sorry, Raul, but I just wanted it with just the continuity. So
No. Just let me respond to Ken. I think, Ken, you're absolutely right, because there is also the issue of governance here, and I see administrators too. They need also to consult with their students. I look at my university, for instance. I mean, we don't get to really decide on what kind of food we're going to have at the union as we should. this is our green governance. And my school never really bothered to engage in that, even though we were really creating some fuss about it. How much paper are we using on campus? How much water? So all those things, affects not only the student body, but also professors, staff, and the president, the provost, and so on and so forth. Also need to look at themselves like little enterprises, like little companies, so everything has to go green. We have to go beyond just teaching those courses in the classroom, but also take action on those things. The kids also need to see their schools going green. Well, let's not trash this, let's not use this, let's, save the water, and so on and so forth. So those are the kind of actions they can take back home with them, and then start teaching their parents a little bit too, if that's the case. So I think, Ken, you're absolutely right. It's an ecosystem here, that we need to take care of. But also we need to start thinking about governance, how we addressing, how we're dealing with all those issues together, Yeah. And going back to what you're saying too, I look at my school, for instance. I think every single course, I know that engineering is beginning to add more sustainability types of courses, but even at the business school, we also have the obligation to, for every single course, have a sustainability component, to it. So I think that's how you really shape the new curriculum, and you really start shaping, students' mindsets. Yeah. I'm sorry, maybe I talked too much.
No. That was great.
Right. So I have one more thing to share. Which is related to a similar experience of yours. So I've been on doing several webinars and training programs. I've been talking to university students in the conjunction of innovation and entrepreneurship as well. Recent, kids especially realize what's really going on, and it bothers me a lot because we owe them this planet, right? Whatever we did on our way went in a different direction, and difficult direction for kids also. They are very emotional on the mistake that we did. So I just would like to share an event that I had the pleasure of doing on the Touch a Life platform. I talked about the water consumption towards our t-shirts, and guess what? Tall team came back to me saying that girl told her parents that she doesn't want to buy t-shirts anymore. That's the profound understanding that all these kids have. And I want every adult to pay attention to what they are going through once they experience what's really going on around them. So we have very, very big responsibilities on our shoulders. So George, again, how do we strengthen resilience and adaptive capacity to climate-related hazards?
I think one thing is and this is something Peter Thompson at the UN did about a year ago. He started sort of changing the messaging, which was, it is time to be brutally honest and frank with everybody we're talking to. I know I'm one of the ones that occasionally goes, I kind of downplay things a little bit. I really am resistive about talking about the negatives, and I try to talk about solutions to the problems as opposed to just the problem without a solution. I'm not very pro just posting negativity out there. So I think it's being brutally that we need to really, when we talk to these youth, go, look, we're really sorry. That's one of the things I say. I apologize. We stole from your generation, literally resources that we burned up to go from A to B that you won't have or future generations won't have. So I apologize. It was mostly out of lack of understanding. We did not know driving our cars or using a plastic bottle might end our species someday. That was never a discussion or a thought until semi-recently. But now that we know what we know, Sylvia Earle, we know we've got to do, there is no other option. There is no ignoring this or lack of attention. It's only, the problem's only going to get worse, which is why I think finally people are, the corona thing finally shook enough people up to get them off the fence to say, oh, hell, I don't want to go through anything like this. Well, I think we have to be brutally honest and say that was like the tip of the iceberg. You're probably going to face, if you're a coastal or island community, you're probably in the next 10 to 20, 30 years, you're going to face some huge challenges. And we're sorry for that, but we're going to try to be here for you. And the solutions we're going to have are adaptation, because we fell asleep for mitigation. We were not there. We missed that window 20, 30, 40 years ago of mitigation opportunity. So we're in adaptation only. We're going to be with you, coastal and island communities. We're going to be with you, youth. And we're still going to have a shitty legacy.
I
George,
agree
I
with
think-
you. Yeah.
Reality.
Go ahead, Raul.
No matter, you know, how
No,
but it can go from just a bad legacy to just absolutely horrible if we don't come out of these COP with pledges. Prasad, there's a pledge from 2015, $100 billion pledge for SIDS. That hasn't. It was just talked about yesterday at the UN. Those money haven't been given out yet.
This is why pledges are useless.
7 years ago, to help the. If we can't escalate and amplify and accelerate getting pledges into the real pockets, we're done.
No, I mean, the same thing is happening in Brazil. They talk so much about protecting the Amazon region, but there is no money coming to pay for environmental services. So, I mean, you have to convince somebody there that don't chop down the tree or don't do this and that, and you can't unless you have some help from the outside. But I agree with you entirely that we're way beyond mitigation now. We are now into an adaptation, strategy moving forward. And a lot of people are refusing to even, acknowledge that. And that, I think, is going to do more and more damage as we move forward. I agree with you entirely. Yeah.
I to build on what you said, George, about islands, I actually think islands is a great place to start, because they're geographically constrained just by the nature of what they are, right? They're an island of a certain size. And therefore, you can look at it from an input-output model. What comes into the island, what stays on the island, what leaves the island. And you can think about material flows, and you can think about energy and so on. And all of these issues that are hidden behind the 17 SDGs are a little microcosm on an island. I mean, I've been doing a lot of work on the island of Aruba, and there's still a ton of work to go to put things into practice. But we have a vision for 2050, which is a sustainable circular economy. So it's a start. We've got at least a vision of where we want to go. But you can use the island because it is, something like Aruba, 95% dependent on tourism. Well, there's a non-resilient issue to deal with right away. But then you're not even sustainable on your own food production. Everything, almost everything, has to be imported. And so if you're going to go to resilience, just look at the input-output model in an island and start saying, okay, what do we need to do to change it to become resilient? And then you can take that same thinking and you can go to Sao Paulo, or you can go to Rio, or you can go to any city anywhere in the world. And it's a little bit more difficult because there isn't that same geographic boundary. There may be a city, that is defined, but it's a very porous from a material flow point of view and an energy flux point of view. So it's not quite so easy to manage a city as it is an island. But we can take the learning from islands and then start thinking about how we do that in these cities that bleed out into the countryside and then back into another city. But the issues are fundamentally the same.
Island-like scenario is also extremely important. So you take a more proactive adaptation, approach to the issues that are coming down the pipeline. That could also be one way to build more resilience, into the system. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same thing. The reason I could go down about 50 reasons that I picked Cozumel as the place for the Ocean Research Center and the Mesoamerican, it's the second largest reef on the planet. I could go down those things, but exactly what Ken said, as a experimental scientist, I went, if we can do it on this island, we can clone it.
Yeah.
Not only that, Cozumel is the most visited tropical place destination on the planet. 7 million a year. I went, that's cash flow, and that's people that need to have awareness. If we put the center where the people are, we bring the people to the center, and we are going to educate them while they're in paradise about how we're going to lose or get paradise back. And we're going to ask them for some money. So, and we're going to use that. You know, we can install renewable energy, I'm going to have a Tesla sales office in the Ocean Research Center, right? Because we're going to have Tesla. Right. You know, you're going to bring, how hard is it to invite a corporate customer to come and see, how did you do this on an island? How did you give free transportation to everybody on the island? Mm-hmm. With electric vehicles, renewable energy, and who has to pay for their vehicles when they come? Tourists. Who doesn't have to pay? The locals, right? Yeah. So it's just, again, I'm just supporting. If we can fix the problem where you got 7 million people coming, where there's 100,000 residents on a tiny island every year and dumping their caca, if we can fix it there, I think we can fix it in a lot of other places.
I agree. We are at a time where we need to put more emphasis on saving the planet with all all careful acts to putting everybody in the safest zone possible along with the industry processes and their practices without greenwashing much. So in that connection, Ken, I would like to pick your mind on what is that we are trying to sustain in sustainability?
Well, I think, as I said in my opening remarks, it's life. And so I think we have to understand what it means to be alive. And, you know, I can go back to some work that was done after the discovery of the structure of DNA by Crick and Watson. There was some work done on what is the meaning of life, what are the fundamental requirements for life. And I think when we start to look at what those are, we can start making a parallel with all of the human-made things that we've got on the planet, you know, all the technology and all the other things that make up life today. And we can say, well, where do they fall short in mirroring the sustainability of life? Because life is sustainable. And one of the elements of life is that it's able to reproduce. The fact that we have DNA is the reproduction engine that enables another generation. And so sustainability has a regeneration element built in structurally as DNA. So where is that in all of our human artifice? We don't have it. So that's one piece. You know, everything in nature is powered by the sun in one way, shape, or form. And so how do we, you know, we know conceptually we have to go to clean energy, but then what does that mean? It's great for George to put the solar and wind on the island, but when nature does it, it doesn't have a concept of waste, right? When we do it with windmills, like they're finding in Europe, after 15 years or 20 years of running the windmill blades, the blades aren't functioning and you have to replace them. And when you make them out of something that you don't know what to do with at the end of their use period, now you have a big waste problem. Although the windmills in Europe are now coming into landfills and they have a glut of windmill blades. So the designs are wrong. So, you know, this is why we have to get out of the siloed thinking of 17 SDGs. We have to get out of the siloed teaching in our colleges. I mean, when a lot of my work, I've been working on using fractals to dive deeper and deeper into a topic. And even just when you think of the idea of fractals, I can put it into architecture and look at roads and you know, think of a road branching. You can put it into biology and think of it, well, it's your lungs and it's your capillary and artery system. It's a fractal. You know, you can look at fractals everywhere in nature, right? And we're not taking the benefit of all that nature offers us and all that it's created over all this time of evolution, to say, how do we learn the lessons from this? And so I think to just go back to the fundamentals of what life is, how does life manifest itself? And then do a parallel path on all the technologies. And that's one of the things I've been doing with the fractal work I've been working on, is trying to understand this notion of life and use a fractal as a systematic way to go deeper and deeper. So we start with the simplicity, but then we get naturally into more and more depth as we go forward.
No, you're making a good point. And the other side of the picture too, when we talk about sustainability, we also need to talk about economic development. Because without technology, without green technology and green innovations, there is no sustainability moving forward. I mean, we're still waiting for that silver bullet. We don't have it yet. But that's, and what amazes me a lot of times when people start talking about sustainability, now they're talking about degrowth. You know, one of the solutions that they're proposing now, no growth at all, in the developed countries. And they're the ones creating most of the technology, green technology and innovations that we can transfer to less developing countries around the planet. That's the other side of the picture too. If we are talking about sustainability, we also need to share our green technology and our green innovations with the rest of the planet. Otherwise, you're not going to have a really nice backyard in your house and in your neighborhood for too much longer. So I think that's also related to everything that you're saying, Ken. That all comes together. We need to look at this big ecosystem. For the shark to keep on swimming around, we need the little fish alive. And a lot of times we don't pay attention to that,
It's a false dichotomy. It's not growth or no growth. It's a different question entirely. It's what do you want to grow?
Yeah.
I want to grow good stuff, right? I don't want to grow toxins, right? I don't want bad stuff. So let's be sure that we're growing the right things. Right? It's a question of what do you want to grow first and then grow it the right way. Right? Yeah. Drucker had this right in his book, The Effective Executive. You have to first be effective and pick the right thing to do. Then you have to do it efficiently. And what we do is we jump to efficiency all the time. Oh, let's make our car engine more efficient and get more kilometers per liter. Well, no, if it's a wrong engine, you're working on the wrong system, right? So you have to pick the right thing first. Then you do that efficiently. And so we've got a lot of these things backwards.
True.
Yeah, Ken, again, the times that you've spoken on, it's the choices we make from the raw material to the death of a product. And I mean literally the death of a product, where it absolutely has no life left in it, no reuse, no nothing. That whole cycle, that whole change of that paradigm, teaching the new engineers that paradigm of we have to think of it that way. We can't just think about what can this put more profit to the bottom line and deliver more dividends to a shareholder. That paradigm has failed us badly.
Gone, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so we got to.
I just want to prick your minds on what are the mechanisms for effective climate change related planning that we need to do, at least beginning with the least developed countries, because they are in trouble now because of this developed countries mess up, right? So do you guys envision any?
Well, I'll start with one, which is, it's not only about fuel. It's not only about energy. It's also about all of the stuff we make and use. 70% of greenhouse gases and all of the climate-related effects are coming from all the stuff we buy and make and sell and use and then throw away and waste. And so the wastefulness is one part of it. And this is why circularity is such an important part. Yes. But I can cycle toxins. That's not a good thing. So I always talk about sustainable circular economy. It's not just sustainability, it's not just circular economy. We have to merge these two concepts. And so let's, again, find the good things and cycle those, and let's redesign anything that's got all the bad things in it so that they're not recycled. Because if it was toxic the first time, I certainly don't want it a second and a third time, right? So I think we've just got to get these things in order and rethink things.
So let me ask you a question again. What's the difference between the concepts of sustainability and circular economy in the real world?
Well, for me, sustainability is trying to make you think. It was originally the idea of leaving the planet better for the next generation, or at least not doing things today that are going to harm the ability for future generations to meet their needs. So it was an intergenerational idea.
Justice, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's fine. And I think as a concept, it works beautifully, but it doesn't tell you anything about who's going to do it, how to do it, when to do it, what, it's just a good idea.
Yeah.
And so we start from that good idea. And when John Elkington of the firm in UK, Sustainability, first coined the triple bottom line, he was trying to talk to business people primarily and say, look, you've not only to think about the economics, you have to think about the people, and you have to think about the environment. And so he was broadening the mindset of business people to say, look, you have three bottom lines. But of course, what most people forget to talk about is you don't start with a bottom line. You end with a bottom line. You've got to have a top line before you can have a bottom line. And so this is one of the reasons why I talk about we have to do things that are positive or beneficial. And this is where regenerative comes in. If you don't have some income, whether it be income for economics, income for equity, income for the environment, by the time you've taken away your expenses, you don't have a bottom line. So you need a top line first. But this was the idea to have more than one topic on which you're focused. So it's circular economy was a recognition that after 34 years of trying to work on this concept of sustainability, we're less sustainable than we were when we first coined the idea, which isn't good, even though there's been an enormous lot of people, myself and all of you included, trying to do a lot of good work for a lot of years. But what we missed was that fundamentally underlying the problem we saw of sustainability, that wasn't the real problem. That was the presenting problem. It's the problem that we saw that we're unsustainable. But the underlying problem, the hidden problem, was that we have a linear global economy where we take things, we make things, we sell things, we use things, then we throw them away, and then we go back to the beginning and start all over again. So fundamentally, it's the linear economy that's the problem. And so the idea of the circular economy to mimic nature, which is circular, as you were saying earlier, you're born, you grow, you reach peak growth, and then you start aging, and eventually you die. This is the circle of life. And so there is an equivalent of that in the product world. And so how do we transfer the best of the sustainable natural world into the thinking in the unsustainable technical world? And so this is where the two start to come together. It's more than just economics. If it was only circular economy, it could be completely bad for people. It could be bad for the environment. So it has to be a sustainable circular economy so that you deal with the linear issues, but you also remember to bring back the environment and the people as well as money. So that's why I always put the two together.
Yeah,
Let me
that reminds me of
add another.
Please
Can I add just one point, Prasad?
Please.
Really quick. One thing that we also need to talk about is the issue of poverty and how poverty relates to sustainability. You were talking early on about how can we control emissions? What are some of, we keep talking about decarbonization and also efficiency, but we also tend to not much talk about the issue of poverty, population size, and few other things that also have an impact on sustainability. Any comments on that, Prasad?
Well, I think we're all beginning to hear, the ESG message, and that's the piece that, again, we didn't have that on our radars 20, 30 years ago. But everything we do now, we have to put on that environmental, social governance thinking cap. We have no choice but to begin doing that at every level, whether you're a nonprofit, a CEO, the president of some country, or a city mayor, or what, or the person that's sweeping the floor. That this goes back to the thing that I keep pushing to have Prasad with everybody I work with do what I call SDG 101, where you tie all 17 SDGs to your life. How do you tie here's the complexity. Those 17 SDGs represent 167 challenge targets. SDG 14, just one parameter of SDG 14 is the Ocean Health Index that has 127 Ocean Health Index factors. So start kind of doing that math. That's how complex this thing is. And that's why collaboration and full picture, we've just got to broaden our scope, of everything we buy, every person we vote for. We got to know who's serving us, whose products are we buying, what are they doing with the money we give, all of that stuff. We've got to do that.
Raul, I think I would come back to something that, again, it's a long used phrase that all sustainability is local, but I think more than ever today that's true. I think, you know, it doesn't matter if my washing machine here in Charlottesville, Virginia came from China. It's now in Charlottesville, Virginia. So what happens to it next, after I finish using it and it falls apart, as George said, and it died. Of course, it was never alive, right? So it never really died, but we mean the functional equivalent of death. Then the sustainability or the circularity of that washing machine is right here where I am. It's local. And in the same way, the poverty is in a place. And so we have to come back to places and deal with these issues in particular places, because the issue where I am in Charlottesville, Virginia is different than where, you know, we may end up in Manaus in a few months' time, right? You know, you've got to take account of place. And it's completely unacceptable that in, you know, we're not even just into the 21st century, right? We're now almost 22 years into this century. It's wrong that we should have people walking on garbage tips, trying to pick out a few plastic bottles here and there to earn $1 a day, to maybe get a cup of water and a bite to eat to sustain themselves. It is completely wrong. And these are the fundamental issues, that the wastefulness of some shouldn't be the last refuge of those at the, you know, who are at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, who are barely getting by with food and shelter. And so we've got to go beyond, you know, the base level of Maslow for more people and really deal with these issues.
That's a valid point. So I'm pushing for 360 degrees sustainable innovation, so that we won't leave any bad thing out of the game. Everything has to be accounted. To answer Dr. Gouvea's question to me a while ago, I'm making this very simple. I'm pushing for impact accounting rather than profit accounting. That is clear, right? So we have to push for impact accounting based on our mistakes, so that we don't repeat the mistakes again and again. So we have to fundamentally change the way how we innovate, put the products into the market, how we consume them, and where we throw them at the end of the day. You know, these has to be accounted for. What is the life cycle of that particular product, where it is ending? That's where can your intelligent idea of circularity would come into the play. We have to make products that are useful for circularity, rather than, you know, we make something and, you know, dig the planet for minerals, so on and so forth. We don't have that kind of luxury anymore, because we are already on the overshoot of 1.5 times that our planet could offer us. If we briefly think about what our kids, our next generations would get with our bad behavior, they got nothing, and they can make innovation more prosperous way than we did. So we have to be mindful of such things. Of course, we can't ignore the biodiversity as well. You know, whatever we are doing, these things are happening and they are damaging biodiversity as well. So we can't deal with everything, and there's no money to deal with this kind of a huge problems at all. So many countries may go bankrupt as well, you know, if they have to really fix these things from tomorrow onwards. So how do we deal with these financial systems and carbon estimations and their, you know, frameworks, accounting framework, all has to be changed in ESG framework again. So these has to be added up, and we need to start calling bad actors. Otherwise, the story would be the same. So we have to be nice, at the same time strong also about these things from now onwards. So having said that, how do we create, first of all, I have one thing in my mind to ask Judge. I want to get into the mind of, you know, SDG creation, part of things. George, you have been involved in writing of one of these papers, right, for SDGs?
Oh, yeah, they about 3 years ago, they solicited some of us. They were going to create a set of encyclopedias to cover the 17 SDGs, a printed and an online version of it. And each SDG would be an encyclopedia, and then there's about 100 chapters in each encyclopedia. And I ended up authoring the Blue Economy Impact, if you will, was the chapter that I wrote. I think related to that is just the way the United Nations and all of them came together to kind of begin to look at, they call it the co-benefits, the interrelations between all the SDGs. And there's one chart with all these dots and stuff with different sizes. And once you see that chart, you understand that's what made them go, oh shit, we don't have very much time on climate and ocean. 2015, we're going to make these top priorities. They're not more important than gender equality or hunger or poverty, but poverty doesn't have a deadline, if you will. Climate doesn't really have a deadline. If we kill our ocean in the next 10 or 20 years, it's dead forever. It'll take 1 million years for some species to ever re-evolve. Maybe we'll have some DNA or whatever. Maybe we'll have some magic technology, but in reality, that was the stimulant. But it was that thing of all these SDGs are totally interrelated, and we've got to simultaneously work on little tiny, I call it micro improvements. Every little thing we do, every action by every individual, picking the straw up, if 1 billion of us do it, does begin to make a difference. So whether all these big picture things we've got, all important, all the little stuff, all important. We got to do all of it as fast as we can. Hopefully best or good practices. And as soon as we find a bad practice or a better practice, we adopt it. We're going to evolve really fast. We can see the technology. Like the windmill thing. In the last few days, Ken, they're now got a technology where they make the windmill blades on site. So there's none of that transportation, and they're 100% recyclable. Yep. So that's because we're problem solvers. So I'm confident we're going to solve some problems, but we've got to put the right people in the right places that are like-minded with us, that are going to divert the funds away. We're going to stop subsidizing the bad shit, and we're going to start subsidizing the good stuff. And the bad actors and blockchain trust are going to little by little eliminate those who exploit, defraud, rip off, steal. They're going to go on up. They're going to be on their own little blacklist, and little by little, the good people will be in the good blockchain, and the bad people will be hanging out there. It might take 20 or 30 years, but that's what I see happening. The good people, the 80% of the planet that I've met in all my global travels, that just want the basic stuff. We all want that. I'll even use the word utopia. We're heading for SDG 17 utopia. And I'm ready to go there. And everybody I talk to that's like-minded wants to go there too. So let's get on with it. Let's get fairness and equality for everybody.
Great. We got 5 more minutes to go. So I would like to run it as a rapid fire. First thing is, how do we suggest about the best ways to integrate climate change measures into the national policies, number one, and take away message from each of us at the end of the day to conclude our conversation here. Gentlemen, let's start with Dr. Gouvea first.
I'll defer to George and to Ken. I'll go last on this one.
All right, great. So who would like to take?
I'll start with something. I think for governments, I think their role is to get out of the way and to enable, be an enabler. Just make sure, like George was saying, don't subsidize bad stuff. Get rid of all that. If you're going to subsidize something that's going to lead us in the direction we want to go. So rather than making nice pledges, just change the systems that you can, whatever levers you can pull, and just enable the rest of us to get on with it. Right. So that's what I'd say for governments. As a final thought, I think I'd go back to where we started on, World Kindness Day. I would ask for everybody, since we're talking about climate, to be kind to carbon. Don't demonize carbon. Poor little carbon gets such a bad rap, and it's only an element in the periodic table, right? So I don't want zero carbon, because guess what? I'm made of carbon. And so the longer I can stay around, I'll be happy. Thank you. So don't demonize carbon. Ask a different question. Where should carbon be is a better question. And if the answer is a lot of that carbon shouldn't be in the atmosphere or in the oceans, but it should be in soil as an organic nutrient, then guess what? Let's start looking at that as where carbon should be, and not just think about, well, we can reduce the pollution. It's where should carbon be, and give carbon a break. It's a periodic element.
Yeah, you saved my time. And I'm about to say that we are made up with carbon. So we need to be mindful of how do we deal with the carbon more sensibly than accusing it, right? So we have no escape shoot from that jar.
All right, so I'm going to go back. Thank you, Ken, for reminding us that it's kindness day. So I'm going to go right back to what I said. I think we all need to practice and encourage random acts of kindness as a start. To have a peaceful planet, we need peaceful people. Or John Lennon, all we need is love, love, love. So there's where I would go with kindness. But I'm going to repeat, you got to know who you're voting for. I think we have a pretty good example, a recent pretty good example. If we have the wrong person in the office, it can have a huge, huge global impact on what's going to happen with our environment in the future. So whether it's a mayor or a president of a country, really spend some time knowing look at the voting record of who you're going to vote for. So I think that the voting with our wallets. And then I would say, so I'm a chemist too. Well, in fact, what I say to the kids is the sad legacy is that we decided to use crude oil to move us from A to B when we had some other alternatives, when we really want or need this really valuable chemistry, this magical molecule that we can turn into so many products that are so beneficial and so helpful to us, medicines and synthetics and all kinds of stronger materials. And what did we do? We burned 80 or 90% of that resource up in about 50 or 60 years or 70, whatever it is, 100 years. So that's real. We just got to really think about, not that carbon's bad, because carbon's got all this good stuff for us, but that it's got a couple of forms that it can exist in a couple of places that we really don't want it. And the last thing would be, everyone on this planet has their time, their talent, and their treasure that they can go find a nonprofit or somebody that's doing something that's close to your passion for the planet. Go get involved with them and do something locally, or when you go on a holiday, seek out a group and go and spend one of your 7 days doing a volunteer work to serve some group that's trying to do something related. If you like turtles, go find a turtle group, go to that island and help them. Or help your local group clean up a river or lake, or go march against the coal-fired plant in your town. Whatever it is, do something locally.
Nice words, Jared. How about you, Dr. Gouvea?
Yeah, my message to government is be part of the solution, not be part of the problem, be a conduit for sustainability, and really support NGOs, universities, private companies, people that are out there trying to make this planet a better planet for future generations. That would be my main message to governments around the planet.
So let's take everything with us so that we all can sustain in this world. And actually, I have to say one more thing. This event, the World Kindness Day through Touch a Life organization is happening after the IPCC report, and also while COP26 is happening now. It has a strong message, and the Touch a Life organization has done an extraordinary job to put this together in promoting UN SDGs and inviting so many speakers, very talented, who can connect all the dots that includes employment and prosperity on this planet. So kudos to you all who are bringing this kind of great perspective to make things happen from now onward, so that we will have a sustainable civilization in the future. So I applaud you for all your wisdom and kindness to give your time, and I really enjoyed the company of yours, Dr. Gouvea, Ken, and George. Thank you very much for your time. And on my behalf and
Thank you.
Suraksha as well,
Thanks,
I would
Prasad.
like to thank Touch a Life Foundation for doing this great event, as well as giving us an opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prasad.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Touch a Life Foundation.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. What an honor to be here. Every action counts. Together we can, and we leave no one behind was the first slogan at the UN. That last slogan was for the small islands. We're not going to leave you behind. The small islands all came together. This is important. And they came back the next day to the UN and they said, those are 3 great slogans. And we respect that you made that last one to not leave us behind. We would ask you to please change that. We leave no species behind. That shows you
All
the
species
attitude
matter.
of
Yeah.
island people. No species behind. They changed that motto that was directed for their benefit to be global. So we all need to not leave another species behind.
Great.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. Let's do it.